May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths crossed his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. Today's guest is Yehudah Alan Winter, who was a very early Tassajara student. In fact, the first person from the Zen Center realm to live at Tassajara before we bought it. And you're going to hear about that, his relationship with Edward Brown, and his work with yourpersonalceremony.com. That's really interesting. He and his wife do personal ceremonies, they do weddings, and I'm not sure what else, but you can check it out. And you can hear about compassionate listening and the work he has done with compassionate listening with Israelis and Palestinians in Africa, here in Indonesia, in Java. And so he's done a lot of interesting things. And look, we're going to give him a call and talk to him as soon as we've had our pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, hit pause if you wish, and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're through, hit unpause. And we'll hit the bell, and we'll all be back together at the same time, and we'll give that call to Yehudah Alan Winter.
Hey, David.
Hi, Alan. How you doing?
I'm doing well, huh? Your voice hasn't changed. so all gravelly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So where are you right now?
I'm on the coast of north coast of Oregon, a little town called Manzanita. So, but a lovely little. It's been raining since 10 o'clock this morning, mostly pretty hard. But we're in a room we're surrounded by windows, so it's not like being at home in a pouring rain where we don't get to look out on the forest and watch the wind and hear the rain falling on all the skylights and the roof. So it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been raining here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good.
A little warmer there, though. I would imagine.
It's not very warm, but it's not, I'm in a t-shirt, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
warmer here than Portland. It's probably in the low 50s. Probably not quite 50 in Portland.
Yeah. So, what are you up to these days?
Quite a number of things. The Zen community of Oregon has co-designed a program called Awakening to Whiteness. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure who they did it in sync with. I'm sure they've gotten a lot of material from different sources, but once a month we gather, we get an assignment of readings and documentaries and podcasts and stuff that focus on racism and ending racism, and this particular one this month was focused on Buddhist, both Buddhist approaches to ending racism, as well as where Buddhists fall into the holier than thou category of what they term spiritual bypass of personal racism. So so that's one thing. I mean, it's not a huge commitment, but we're really glad when we get a chance to meet in our group of 4 other people once a month and talk about our reactions to, there's stuff to focus on, but there's also the material that we're trying to absorb. So that's one thing. And also on Sundays, I've been doing 2 30-minute sessions of meditation followed by a lecture by one of the Zen teachers from the Zen community of Oregon. That they have a monastery down on the Lower Columbia in Clatskanie. Trying to remember the name of it. I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, but it's what's his name? Bayes.
Oh, Jan Bay?
Yeah.
And
they have their own style of combining Soto and Rinzai, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a period called Ango.
Yeah, that means practice period.
Or Ango, I think. Yeah, continuous practice, and so they studied a piece of Dogen's on collective, on continuous practice. I didn't participate in that, but I did participate in a thing on the 5 precepts. It's interesting that it's, I think I mentioned this in one of my emails that it's a different focus than we had, as where it was, we were just sitting, shikantaza.
Yeah.
They're looking at, I can't remember the term offhand, but more changing our mindset, so they focus a little more consciously on not koans, though they mention koans, but a little more of how our minds work to distract us and such. Rather than just focusing on breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're really engaged there. That's good. But you've also got the Compassionate Listening Oregon.
Yeah. We haven't taught. I mean, it's gone online since the COVID happened, and about 5 years ago, Joni and I went on a delegation to Israel and Palestine, and we did the teaching on that. We were just becoming facilitators back then formally, and we offered to do that in compensation for a little reduction in the cost. And we don't take credit for it, but out of that group, I think at least 5 more people became facilitators, and it seemed to be a turning point for the Compassionate Listening Project, which is the main organization, which because of the perfectionism of the founder and the person who sort of controlled it, I think it became much more difficult, shall we say, to break into the system.
Mm-hmm.
And so it stayed very, very small I've been connected to them for over 20 years now.
What is compassionate listening, and what does it come from, and who's the founder?
Leah Green, she was part of the Earth Stewards Network, but she had spent quite a bit of time as a young person in Israel and was fluent both in Hebrew and in Arabic, and she got very concerned about the oppression of Palestinians, and so as she worked with the Earth Stewards, she founded a different organization. Its name is not coming back to me at the moment. As part of the Earth Stewards, and she started guiding people to Israel for these delegations, and but she noticed that the people who were going on it were convinced, long ago that of the injustice on the Israeli side, but they weren't seeing the responsibilities of the Palestinians. So they ended up arguing with the settlers and anybody who disagreed with them, rather than trying to, be more open-minded. So she heard about a woman who was living in Santa Barbara, Jean Knudsen Hoffman, who's no longer on this plane, but because Jean had started something called Compassionate Listening, and Leah asked her to teach her about it, and she said, "Well, when is your next delegation?" And she told her it was coming up, and so she said, "Just bring me with you, and I will teach everyone." And so that was the beginning of the transition to the Compassionate Listening Project from what it had been before. So I went on one of the very first ones after that, and we were still having a lot of trouble because nobody had been trained previously in compassionate listening before they went on it, and the little bit of time that was spent by the more experienced people it just wasn't enough, shall we say. So I always complained about that to them, and I got started in the facilitation program early on, but I had some really basic disagreements with some of the main person who was teaching it. She did come out with a early book on the subject, and some guidance and what have you. But it borrows from Joanna Macy's work, and other people. Sitting in the Fire. I can't remember the guy's name who wrote that.
Can you say what it is? I mean, I hear the term compassionate listening, but can you describe it?
Okay. Yeah, it's in some ways it's similar to Marshall Rosenberg's work, but it's less head-centered and more heart-centered, and really teaches how to just listen silently and to respond with, rather open-ended questions and actually reflective listening is sometimes, you tell me more about such and such, something that touched the listener very deeply was the place, in your heart rather than in your head, was the place to help the individual who was speaking to deepen what they were saying and really feel listened to by someone who they could regard as a more neutral person rather than just speaking to other people, speaking to the choir, as the expression goes. And it led to a lot of deeper processing by people and gave some openings because, as I'm sure you know or assume, the conversation between Israelis and Palestinians is more or less non-existent anymore. It just doesn't. Everybody is just fearful and defensive and such. So they started leading delegations around doing compassionate listening with the speakers and getting a wider range of speakers from various viewpoints. Some very valuable things came from it. Not enough to bring peace to that place, but Joni and I taught it in Java when we were there with. There's a little community called Peace Place in Pati, Eastern Java, and they're part of the Friends Peace Network that is all over the world. And we did some of it in Rwanda and Uganda, with Friends Peace Team over there in Rwanda. And we did a little bit when we were in India, and it's a very universal issue where people don't really listen for very long when someone is speaking, but they start accumulating how they disagree with that person. So as soon as a person pauses, they chime in with, something more argumentative rather than, more acknowledging of what the person said. So it's a way of, kind of learning to speak and listen from the heart and bring more, see the commonality. I mean, if you really listen deeply to people, and we teach different levels of listening, the narrative, the nonverbal, the emotion, and then the major points. It's not the morals, values. The values that people share are usually pretty universal. I lost a family member in this conflict. They were shot in the back, in a demonstration. And I'm never going to forgive the people who are responsible for this. But, there's another side to it, the fear and mistrust from both sides, that once people can see, another viewpoint, and you can see the commonality. I love family as well, and that whatever happened to you, I would have the same feelings about it. So I don't know. Yeah, there's a really good book. I can send you the online copy of it if you want.
Sure.
Sure. You can learn compassionate listening just from this book. You don't have to go to a class.
Do you remember any other examples? You mentioned somebody saying, I had a family member shot in the back. Any, like in the Israeli-Palestinian situation, do you remember any particular events or conversations or exchanges?
Well,
anything that showed any opening up from someone, any benefit from the compassionate listening?
Well, a lot of them are just from people's presence with each other, and being able to, respond, like I was saying, with a reflective comment about how something moved you that they said. The acknowledgement can be so powerful to someone who, is very, very much mired in their belief system of the guilt of the other person, or the position of themselves as a victim and the other person as a perpetrator.
Yeah. Now, usually in most situations, you will have one side that is more being victimized than the other. But I can certainly understand that a way to get through to the, say, the stronger side that might be victimizing the others would be to listen to them and not argue with them. So did you find your when you went there with groups that it was more rewarding, a better experience when you did it with compassionate listening?
Oh yeah, 1,000% for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of people have been very influenced by it.
Yeah, well, that's good. I know there's a lot of people have tried to help in that situation, Israel, Palestine, and the Pakistan, India is another one that's gone on forever. Has really never cooled off, and just people seem so intransigent. Did has there been any effort? Oh gosh, man, that would be hard in Palestine. No, in Pakistan, India.
I don't know that there's been. I don't know of. Well, one of the main people in the Compassion Listening Project has worked a lot in Kashmir.
Well, there you go. That's right, the heart of the problem there.
Yeah. But right within India, just between Muslim and Hindu. While we were there, this new premier came in, or president, or whatever he calls himself, and started passing all these laws very prejudicial against Muslims. It's really,
I have some very close friends here that are descended from Pakistani Hindus that lost their homes and had to leave at partition when Muslims just took over their homes. And they run a natural food store here, and a husband and wife, and they're both from the Pakistani Hindu diaspora, a number of which went to Java, close, but they came here. And I haven't talked to the wife, but the husband's very supportive of Modi. And they're really nice people. I didn't say anything, but I had more of an impression like what you said about what's happening over there. All right, now let me ask you something else. You have a thing called personal ceremony.
Yeah.
Your personal ceremony. Yourpersonalceremony.com. Can you say what that is?
Okay. So in 1975, I heard about the Universal Life Church and that they were offering to make people ministers if they sent them $1.
Isn't that great?
So being who I am, I didn't believe it. So I sent them a postcard saying, "Are you guys for real?" And by return mail, I got my minister's certificate. So it didn't even cost me $1. And of course, now you can do it on the internet, and you can even become a bishop if you pay them a little money. Anyway,
I love it. I love it.
Right after that, someone told me they were getting married, and I said, "Oh, well, I'm a minister. I can perform the ceremony." So I did that, and then I sent in the certificate, and then the county called me up and said, "You have to register with us." So I went down to the county headquarters. This is down in Josephine County, Grants Pass, and paid my $3.75 or whatever to get registered. And then different opportunities came up for me to perform weddings, including I got Anne involved. She would play flute for part of the ceremony. And I got into doing customized ceremonies, based on people's religious background, ethnic background, and what have you. And, since Joni and I have gotten together, we've done a lot of, she's done a lot of Hindu Jewish, Christian Jewish, Hindu Christian weddings, and got into elopements, which we use our backyard or our living room or dining room.
That's terrific.
And especially during COVID, I think she's done over 25 ceremonies, so-called elopements, just because they're not, big. There's no big party afterwards, and they're often day of the person calling, or within a week or something. But sometimes we even have to scrape up the witnesses from the surrounding neighborhood. I don't do very many anymore because Joni's much better at getting reviews and posting stuff on Facebook and such. So, but we're still doing 30 or 40 between us every year, and
that's quite a few.
And we charge like $200 for an elopement, and $400 or more. We give a sliding scale for a more formal wedding where we work with the couple to design a ceremony. So, and people, that used to be all I did was writing ceremonies with people, and now it's more of the elopement style. Just financially, it's more affordable and what have you. And Not very many people could, during the 2008 and afterwards, people couldn't afford to have a big $50,000 wedding. So anyway, so that's what your personal ceremony is about.
That is really interesting. Have you ever done a Muslim Jewish?
I did one a long time ago. In Israel, they go to Cyprus.
Oh,
same thing in Israel.
Oh, I'm sure there'd be a lot over there. Hey, so didn't you have a profession, something you did for a living other than that?
Oh yeah. I moved up to Portland to go to nursing school.
Yeah.
So I became a nurse in mid '80s, and that's what I've done ever since.
What are you doing there?
What am I doing? I'm heating up some coffee.
Aha, I'm drinking some tea. So you were a nurse. What sort of nurse?
I did a lot of different kinds of nursing, and taught toward the end of my career. I taught nursing, and for the last several years, I've been doing. I've been retired, but in the fall, I've been doing flu vaccination clinics.
Oh, really? That's wonderful.
So I make a few grand, and so I don't have to spend as much on my retirement, and keep my skills and my license alive. When I've signed up with a couple of companies who may give me a job doing it when the COVID shots become more public.
Oh yeah. As still a practicing nurse, then cool. You've been involved. How has the COVID-19 virus affected your life and your nursing life?
Yeah, well, Joni was a little leery of me doing flu vaccinations this fall, but I did for a couple of months. Wore a mask, and most of the clinics were with government agencies, so they were all pretty careful people. They wore masks as well. I even got, if I didn't change my gloves or wear my gloves, I got a complaint. So I got a couple of complaints filed about me,
Yeah.
It's always interesting. There's only 2 roads into this little town where we're staying, and both of them have these portable signs, electrified signs saying Manzanita, masks are required. Manzanita, I've never seen anything like it. But on the beach, when we were walking on the beach, nobody was wearing a mask.
We don't wear masks when we walk on the beach, but we take them to the beach. We have to walk there. There are local security that we walk past going to the beach, and basically they're just taking parking money. And parking money like 15 cents or for a car, or a quarter or something. And so hey, Alan, I want to move back a little further to where we know each other from. Um, and we know each other from, of course, the San Francisco Zen Center. Tassajara might be where we met most likely, or Sokoji. And you, uh, what? Can we go further back? Where were you born?
I was born in Chicago.
Oh, no kidding!
When I was 10, my parents had a house built in Skokie, in the suburbs outside of Chicago, and so I finished grammar school and high school in Skokie. So Chicago area, but after high school, I really never went back except to visit my parents briefly.
Did you go to college?
Well, I started in Antioch. I finished my first year. I didn't do very well, and I was ready to stretch my legs. So that's when Ed Brown and I were both at Antioch, and we bought a car together. And I always wanted to spend time in the Lake of the Woods area of Canada, Ontario. And I don't know how it happened, but Ed and I bought this car together, and we got camping gear, and we rented a canoe in Kenora, Ontario, and spent 6 weeks canoeing and camping and fishing and doing yoga. And while we were there, his brother Dwight was sending him letters with koans in them. And one of the books I had taken with me was Heinrich Zimmer's Philosophies of India. And I was determined to find one of those religions that spoke to me and follow it. And as it would come together, I ended up, we after Kenora, Ed and I drove to the West Coast, and as you probably know, Ed's from San Rafael.
Yeah.
And I started living in San Francisco, but I ended up going to New York for several months. And when I returned to San Francisco, Ed was living in a little 2-bedroom apartment right off of Fillmore. Yeah, Byington Street. It's 1 block long.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I was close to Sokoji, and I decided I would start sitting meditation there.
So you already knew about it? You already knew about it?
Yeah. This is 1960, probably 1965.
65.
Yeah.
You already knew about it. Had Ed been sitting there?
No, the way it happened was I heard about it, and I knew that they did a longer period of meditation on Saturday mornings, and I was out carousing with some friends of mine in San Francisco, and we were out all night long, and I said, hey, let's go to the Zen, to Sokoji and do meditation. It's time to go do meditation. I don't know if it was 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning or whatever. And these guys agreed with me, and so we went. And by then, Katagiri was the assistant of Suzuki, and he took us out on the balcony or whatever of the little auditorium at Sokoji, and gave us instruction on meditation. And I think by the time the meditation session was over, my friends had left, and I was the only one there, or the only of the group that I came with. So I liked it. There's actually some parallels, between Zen and Judaism. I hadn't totally rejected Judaism, but I hadn't really, related to it. I mean, I had options in San Francisco. Shlomo Carlebach had his free-form synagogue in San Francisco, not far from where we were either. But it just really appealed to me, but I had a hard time waking up at the time to go sit, and so Ed would wake me up, and then he got the Chronicle every morning, so he would read the Chronicle while I went and sat zazen. And at a certain point, I don't know if it was weeks or months later, it was probably weeks, he said, I'm waking up every morning for you to go to meditation. I think I'll go with you. And so some weeks or months after I started, Ed started sitting as well. And I started going to a vocational school, John O'Connell Vocational, in the Mission, and I was learning carpentry skills.
Oh.
And one weekend, I think it was, I went up to Tahoe with Dick Baker and some other folks, and I didn't ski. It wasn't my thing. The woman I was living with, I think, skied, so she was off skiing. Anyway, so Dick went to me and he said, there's this place called Tassajara, and we're thinking about buying land there for a monastery. Why don't you go down there and apply for a job as a carpenter and kind of scout the area out? And when people come down from Zen Center, so it was a horse pasture, was what they were looking at buying. When they come down, you can lead hikes there. So there's a picture of me, I think with Cobancino, hiking into the horse pasture with a group of folks from Zen Center. And Ed came down.
Wait. Cobancino did not come before we bought. Cobancino didn't come till June.
Okay.
June of 67.
All right. Okay. So I was the very first person from Zen Center to actually live there.
Uh-huh.
And this is probably at least a year before we decided to buy the hot springs itself. That was decided after I spent a summer there. Working. So it must have been Roshi then who came. I just know I led a small group there. It was, early on.
How did you? So you did get a job at Tassajara with the Becks. I mean, I know you did.
Right.
Yeah. How did you get it? How did you go about getting it?
Well, I went down there to apply for a job, and they hired me because there weren't very many people who wanted to live down there in an isolated location like that. for the as little money as they were offering.
So what did you do?
And I did carpentry. I did carpentry maintenance. I worked with Bill Parker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He and Kathy were down there, and but I did all kinds of things, maintenance stuff. But I I had some primitive carpentry skills from finishing about a semester of the carpentry program at John O'Connell.
Mm-hmm.
But enough to get hired, you know.
So that was the summer of '66.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was. I was 21 that fall.
I was 21 that spring. No, that winter, February. So did you work in the kitchen any?
No, Ed came down after I got the job. We were still living together on Byington, and after I got the job, I came back up. I don't remember what the gap was between being hired and going down there, but I think Ed might have driven me down, and he applied. He wanted to learn how to cook, and there were two gay guys who were the cooks there, and they hired him as a cook. So he came back up to San Francisco and got his stuff and came down there, and we set up a little Zendo in my room, or maybe we shared a room. I can't remember, in one of the old pine cabins. Not pine. One of the old cabins down toward the swimming pool down there.
Oh yeah, those were redwood. Redwood,
right. I was thinking of the pine rooms up.
Yeah, because the pine rooms were very nice guest rooms.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, the redwood cabins, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I set up a little. I bought a little. I think I might have had a Buddha that I bought in New York, which I still have. Small metal Buddha from Thailand, I think originally.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought a little bell, and we would sit zazen every morning. So we were the first Zen students to meditate at Tassajara, as far as we knew.
Oh, definitely you were.
As far as at least from Zen Center, for sure.
That I'd ever heard of.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and Suzuki Roshi. I was Suzuki Roshi who came down. He came down to visit, and that's when we hiked to the horse pasture. I got a day off or something, and hiked. And that's when he was sitting in the staff kitchen, and Jim Cook prepared him a brown rice lunch, and there were hamburgers on the table, and Suzuki Roshi very perfunctorily pushed away the plate of brown rice and took a hamburger in his hands and started munching down as Jim Cook practically, it was the bartender, looked like he was going to pass out as he was watching this Zen priest eating meat.
Yeah.
Quite a humorous. Quite humorous. I don't know if Ed was there working in the kitchen, but anyway.
Well, yeah, that's classic.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. When in Rome, do as the Romans, right?
Yeah, but he precept. He didn't get hamburgers at the temple. He didn't get hamburgers when he went out to eat in Japantown, which
probably not.
so, and he liked it, and people didn't realize that Japanese priests mainly are not vegetarian. Some of them are. I mean, I was with one teacher who was over there.
Well, a lot of people don't know that Zen priests marry even. I mean, that's maybe a little more common knowledge.
Well, in Japan and some in Tibet. I just had a Myanmar monk over here with an American who's practiced in Myanmar, and they're in a monastery in Java. And the American is vegetarian, but the Myanmar monk will eat chicken. Buddha wasn't a vegetarian, as long as it was served to him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's neat. So you're there at Tassajara. I never knew how, and that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about was how Ed got there. So basically, it was that Richard Baker suggested you go down. You went down, and Ed followed. And I know that Richard liked Ed, and there was a time when I was there that Ed was living in their house, in their apartment.
Oh, really?
With them.
I remember that.
I can remember that. And Richard always sort of supported and promoted Ed. It was my, he recognized, what Paul Disco says about him, says he's an intuitive genius in seeing what people are good at and, seeing where people are at and recognizing, somebody who might have a talent for something. So I wonder if he suggested to Ed that he go join you.
Could very well have been. You'll have to get that from Ed, though.
Yeah. Well, but also the fact of him driving you down, seeing the place, and wanting to learn to cook, that makes perfect sense. So, that was, well, what was Tassajara like there when you were there that summer?
Well, that was the summer that Beck tried to draw more people down there by having all these famous photographers do seminars down there.
Oh.
So Ansel Adams, I remember for sure, Ansel Adams, and Cole Porter, I think. It was not Cole Porter. I think Elliot Porter's son, maybe. I don't know. There were several different photographers.
Morley Bear.
Yeah, that sounds right. Right. Anne Stackpole, I married. Her father knew all these people because he was a big, highfalutin photographer for Life magazine for a number of years. Yeah. So he knew all these folks. So it was, my one comment, my memory of Ansel Adams is, hang on a second. Was that all these young women were drawn around him, and he was this old fart, and he just appeared to be a real womanizer. And that was my impression of Ansel, the famous Ansel Adams.
Yes, I can understand that. He came to Green's restaurant when I was the maitre d' there.
Really?
I remember him coming there. I can't remember if it was more than once. Ah, well, that's interesting. And then, so you were down there then, and you, 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 but you were there just in the summer.
Right, right. Yeah, I actually quit towards, I don't know, can't remember exactly when, but yeah, I couldn't handle working with Beck. I mean, he was really, really a schmuck. And I know he endeared himself to many people, but I don't think anybody who worked for him really liked him.
Oh. Yeah, I never experienced that side of him. What I experienced from him later on when he come down is how much he knew about Tassajara and about the creek and about the natural setting and about the history. I learned a lot from him. He would look at particular stones, big boulders in the creek, and talk about if they'd moved, and he really had an eye for the details there. The only person who had that level of knowledge about everything in our group was Paul Disco, who had the same sort of awareness. But Beck was a math teacher, so that's a pretty impressive combination. Um, so when you left there, what was your? I mean, I know you came back. Uh, did you leave, go back to live? Hey, and wait a minute. You said something. You said you were living with a woman. You said when Dick drove you to Nevada or whatever, what you went to Tahoe to talk to you to suggest. Well, on that trip, he suggested you go to Tassajara. You mentioned that you were living with a woman at that time, but you also said you were still living with Ed's. Was there a woman living with you all?
You know, I may have moved out by then and gotten an apartment. Yeah, I think. I can't remember when I moved out of Ed's place, but I met this woman. I thought I should learn. I was planning on moving to Marin County, so I enrolled in a Spanish class at maybe the college in Marin. I can't remember where. Yeah. I met this Canadian woman there, and we just started seeing each other, and she ended up moving in. I don't know if I'd already rented this place or we rented it together, but it was on Bush Street. And it was a apartment building connected, I think, to another apartment building just a couple blocks down from Suzuki.
Oh.
And there was a Japanese guy in the other apartment building who was a tea master.
A tea master.
I went to at least one tea ceremony with him, and Ed came with me, and for some reason we were waiting for him and sitting in, full or half lotus for half an hour. I don't know how long it was, but Ed passed out. It was more than Ed could handle. I think he finally showed up, and we did tea ceremony with him. But that was a memory of note. But
And how did you like the tea ceremony?
I think it was a bit over. I don't think he did quite the way it should have been done. I don't think it was necessary to make us sit in an uncomfortable position for as long as we did. I think I've done maybe one or two tea ceremonies since then that were much more, maybe they were more commercial. I don't know. I have no idea why this was such a long, drawn-out affair. But
that's not normal. That's not normal. Usually.
It didn't make me want to be learn tea ceremony anyway. After I went to Tassajara to work that summer, Marjorie kept the apartment, and
who's Marjorie?
I think Marjorie was the woman I was living with.
Oh, yeah.
And we never really got back together again after that.
And did you lived somewhere?
Well, I lived, so, I was down at Tassajara, and, gosh, this is interesting. Let's think about this. I came back up to, it's kind of a jumble right now, because in my mind, I'm trying to figure it all out.
Oh, I understand.
Did eventually, we're talking 50 plus years ago.
You're doing good.
I did. I had a friend. Let me think. Oh, okay. So I met another woman at Tassajara who was working down there, and she and I ended up living together in Jamesburg sometime later.
Oh.
She was pregnant. She was pregnant when she came down to Tassajara. Her name was Penny, and she. Let's see. When I came up to San Francisco, I think I lived with. At some point, anyway, I lived with her in Berkeley. No, that was later. God, this is anyway. When I write my autobiography, I'll get all these dates down.
Yeah.
Not much before that. But Penny was pregnant, and when she came back up from Tassajara, we slept together, and she wanted to have sex, and I thought I was nervous about it. And I said, "Are you sure that? You're like 9 months pregnant. Sure it's okay to have sex?" She said, "Oh yeah. Don't worry about it." And sure enough, her, she ended up having the baby that night.
Well, that's one way to bring on labor, is to have sex. Well,
yeah.
Elin and I did that because she was 2 weeks late, and also our midwife in Japan told us right from the first, you should have sex a lot. Have sex as much as you can while you're pregnant. It's really good for you and the baby.
Really?
Yeah, wasn't that great? Thank you, midwife. Well, that's interesting. So
I took her to French Hospital.
Uh-huh.
The only hospital in San Francisco that did natural childbirth. And I'd never been to any, birthing classes. And I don't think Penny had either, but she may have read. Anyway, she did know that she wanted to have a natural childbirth. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we were very attached after that experience.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember all of what followed, but we ended up moving in together, and I rented a house on the Lambert property in Jamesburg.
Wow.
A little house there, and that was, oh God. I might be getting some years switched around, because now I'm remembering that people coming from Zen Center would stop and stay overnight with us sometimes.
Is that right?
On the way to Tassajara.
That's really interesting. I don't remember that. And I started living at Tassajara in like March of '67, right after we bought it, but I didn't leave, you know. But then I was going in and out for various things, and I don't remember you living out there. How long did you live there? I'd stop by Lambert's.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get this all, because for a period of time, you know, I lived in some of the apartments across from Suzuki.
Uh-huh.
I had hurt my back lifting pots at Tassajara after. God, oh, this is after I started living in Tassajara. So I'll have to get all these years in order.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can see. So you were in San Francisco. You were living in Jamesburg. At some point, Penny moved on because.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we split up. Yeah.
And you were at Tassajara quite a bit.
I was at Tassajara that one summer with the Lambert, that the Becks, the last summer the Becks had it, and then then it was a while later when I came and lived at Jamesburg, and I only had lived at Jamesburg for a few months, and then Bill, as I recall, Bill wanted to give Rod the house to live in. And so I moved to an adobe house in the Kashawa Valley with Penny.
Kidding.
So with Penny.
Wow.
And eventually it was a property owned by, oh God, this big banker in San Francisco. Some of the banks have his name attached to it. What was the name? What was his name? Not thinking of it right now.
Send it in an email if you remember it. Well, Kashawa, that's right, you know, next door to Jamesburg. But you came in as a student in Tassajara. I mean, you were, at one point, you were the head cook, right? Or you were working in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, I was, yeah. I mean, there was a time when I got my Merchant Seamen's papers.
Oh my God!
And went on one voyage, and when I came back, I got off the ship, and Ed had invited me to come work with him, and Suzuki Roshi. Maybe I can't remember, but when I talked with Suzuki Roshi, he said, "You come down here now. Ed, your friend Ed needs you."
I understand.
And so I decided, yeah, you probably do. So that's when I came down as a student at Tassajara. That was the, you know, I mean, Ed would sometimes, you know, stay in his cabin for days on end. And I remember bringing food out to him. And I did become the head cook during that period. I was hired as the chief baker.
Uh-huh.
But,
yeah, that was early on.
Yeah, and that wasn't the first round of students before. Cobanchino, I think, had come down there by that time, but yeah, I can't remember. But that was when people were not shaving their heads. That early time of maybe the first year or so of Tassajara. But what am I thinking about? Yeah, so I cut a deal with Roshi. I said, well, if you want me to come down there, then I'm not gonna pay anything to be down there.
Yeah, right.
And he consented to that.
Uh-huh.
He wanted to keep Ed from going off the deep end, and he thought I could be the one that did it. And I suppose I was, because eventually he came out of his cabin. But I mean, I sat Zazen next to Ed. He was, the first one off the, first one in the line of meditators. I had the first cushion. I had the second cushion, and that was when he would shake.
Oh,
about that period.
But no, he shook for years. I sat next to him. I sat next to him in 670, and I thought he was going to kill himself shaking. I thought he was going to bash his head against the stones in the wall. He would shake violently sometimes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know if you know anything about it's called co-counseling.
Yeah, sure.
Reevaluation co-counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, in co-counseling, shaking is all about fear. And it's a way of shaking off fear.
Mm-hmm.
When I did co-counseling for several years, and whenever I met anybody who shook, and I never met anybody that shook as much as Ed did, but Ed's whole adoption, or not adoption, but his time as an orphan, basically. He was in an orphanage for a period of time.
Well, yeah, and first, his mother died. Father put him and his brother in an orphanage, and then he and his brother were separated. It was the separation that did him in. Well, both. The 1-2 blow there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sort of have always looked at that. At least once I became aware, since I did co-counseling, I put 2 and 2 together, and I said, "Oh, Ed did this. This was his way of shaking off all of the trauma,
Yeah,
that happened in his life."
Yeah. Do you what do you remember about Suzuki Roshi?
I think I've written some things to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I remember when I had the job of cleaning the tubs, or it was my turn to clean tubs or whatever, and Suzuki Roshi came in and used one of the private tubs, and when I came in there to straighten up, it was a horrible mess. I can't remember the specifics of why I judged it as that, but I was like shocked, because I had this, image still of Zen master, of the Japanese Zen masters anyway, of having everything, in perfect alignment, So naturally they would leave everything as neat as a pin when they left. But I think on some level, purposefully or not, I was learning the humanity of of a teacher, not to put people on pedestals, which I'm certainly guilty of, So that's one vivid memory I have of him. I remember once driving up to San Francisco. He was in the back seat, and Tim Buckley was driving that black Volvo, bubble top Volvo, and I remember looking in the back seat, and as headlights shone on Roshi's face, I could see how careworn he looked. And that was also a revealing moment for me. That, he could be concerned with worldly things, I guess. How I look at that. Anyway, I'm putting the Hanukkah candles in the menorah right now. Tony's making dinner.
So at some point, you, how long were you around Zen Center, and when did you go to Oregon?
Okay, so the second summer I was a Zen student down there is when Anne came down taking care of Kathy and Sterling's two kids. Anne and I started a relationship at that point, and I bought a pickup truck. I left Tassajara. I don't know, it was in the summer or fall, and I bought a pickup truck and built a camper on the back of it. And Anne and I were going to drive up to Canada because I heard you could, get free land up there. And I had, for years, wanted to homestead. I was part of, I knew I wanted to be part of the Back to the Land movement. So we were ready to take off, and that's when Ed and Meg decided they were going to get married, and I offered to bake the cake, the wedding cake, for Ed. So my last trip down before I went up to Canada was to bake their wedding cake. So I was there at their wedding.
Yeah, that was 1970 in, I don't know, May, June, something like that. Yeah,
right. Beginning of the guest season there, I think, or just before it. Yeah, and then we drove up to Canada.
You're right. I don't remember guests. You're right. So it was probably before. Good Lord. It was April, huh? Because the guest season would start May 1st.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a bash. That was the biggest bash in Tassajara history.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, the Zen Center Tassajara history. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It was an outlier. And then after that, so you made that wedding cake. Well, that was good. And after that, you went to Canada?
Yeah, we were up in Canada for the, we settled in Nelson, outside of Nelson, BC, and I got a job as a baker up there, but the winter was not a pleasant one. I figured I've counted, we had 13 feet of snow that winter. And I decided to come back to the States, and I ran into Bill and Kathy Parker up there in Canada.
No kidding.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember why he was there. He was probably thinking about moving up there as well. But I got a letter from them at some point while we were up in Nelson, and they had stopped in Williams, Oregon, southern Oregon, and they stayed somewhat. Well, I can't remember, but they went. They stopped at these people's home, who are real old timers in Williams, and the woman was talking about the history of the place, which of course Bill was always interested in stuff like that. And she said that there was a sign over the gate at one time saying the Stackpole Place. So I don't know I think they did some research on it, and then they wrote us and they told Anne that this was a place that her great grandparents had homesteaded.
Huh.
And that they were living on.
Huh.
And we just thought this was really an interesting coincidence. So when we decided to come back to the States, we went out to Williams, and through a bunch of circumstances, we ended up living on and eventually buying a piece of property less than a mile from that homestead.
Oh, wow. Hey.
Yeah.
I just remembered, weren't you doing baking at Page Street after we bought the building?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And weren't you the first person to sell bread or something like that? Didn't you have some sort of commercial thing going?
Yeah, on a very small basis. I called it Fresh Bread Fred. And
that's funny.
I remember, I think it was Charlotte Silver thought that it was Ed who was doing the baking, and called Ed Fred for a long time.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyway, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I had a little operation going on there.
Uh-huh. You're probably going to have to go to dinner in a little bit.
Yeah, Joni just put a plate in front of me.
Well, let me ask you, there's one thing. I always write you and call you, actually I don't know how to pronounce it, or I don't remember, because it's always just writing it, but Yehudah.
Yeah, perfect.
So Yehudah, Yehudah Alan Winter, how did you come to get the name Yehudah?
When I started going to Hebrew school, I think my parents couldn't afford to pay for it, but there was an Orthodox synagogue near where we lived in Chicago, and they offered a free Hebrew school. But when I entered there, they said, "You don't have a Hebrew name. We're going to give you a Hebrew name."
Oh.
And I don't know if they chose Yehudah because the English equivalent is Judah, and my middle name was Jay. I don't know if that. I have no idea how I got that, how I was given that name. But a few years ago, when I decided to take it on, it's a long time now. Joni reminds me, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It may have been for that reason, but I'm pretty sure it was at that Hebrew school.
That's cool. So it goes way back. That's really neat. Now listen, you should eat your dinner. Right? Shouldn't we part?
Temporarily.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate all that. It's really interesting. And I really appreciate the direction your life has taken, always, respecting your roots and respecting the wisdom you've run into, and being a sort of bodhisattva, figuring out how to help others and benefit others as much as possible.
That's really a sweet thing to say. Thank you.
Well, you deserve it. And hey, maybe someday we'll meet again. I might make it to Oregon.
I hope so. It's been a while since I've seen you here.
Yeah, well, Katrinka's son lives in Bandon, and she goes there every year.
Oh, my.
And I haven't left here.
Uh-huh. When was that time you were in Portland at the bookstore? Remember the year of that?
Book signings were in Portland, I'd say 94, 99, 2000, and 2001.
Oh, okay. So it could have been any of those.
Yeah. At Powell's. I did.
Right. Yeah, Powell's on Hawthorne is where I saw you.
I did one at a smaller bookstore, but Powell's is the great one. It's one of the greatest bookstores. It's a remarkable bookstore.
Yeah, well, the one you were at that I went to was their smallest store, not the big one on Burnside.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking. I said I was at one that was smaller.
Portland.
Oh, but that's part of Powell's too, huh? The other one?
Yeah, the one on Hawthorne.
And Powell's is still going?
Oh yeah, all of them. I think they have a couple more.
That's great.
Yeah,
I love it. A bookstore that puts new and used books together.
Yes.
That's unique.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, enjoy your dinner, and thanks a lot. And it's a pleasure communicating with you through the years.
Likewise, David. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much for inviting me to participate in your history.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for being part of my history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great.
Take
All right.
care.
We'll stay in touch.
Yeah.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
So thanks a lot, Yehudah Alan Winter. That was great. Really appreciate your being our guest today, and I've appreciated being your friend for half a century. Although we only come together now and then, mainly in cyberspace, entirely in cyberspace in recent decades, or a couple of decades, or a decade and a half. You know, Alan told me something once that I want to add here. I wish I'd asked him about it, but I didn't think of it. And that is, remember, he and Ed Brown were at Antioch together, and they bought a car and went to Canada. And camped out in the wilderness. He said for 6 weeks. Now, he did mention that they were getting mail, so they had some place they could check in with. I didn't really get the details of that exactly where or anything. Anyway, I remember long ago, Alan told me that he and Ed were there in the wilderness, just the two of them, nobody else, and that they had some disagreement, and that Alan, I don't like to use curse words in the podcast because it can, well, I don't like to use curse words in general well, actually in my conversation or in writing or podcasts. And one good reason not to is like there's some platforms that, if there's one bad word, then everything on the entire platform has to be for 18 years or older or something, various things like that. So he said F you to Edward in the heat of the moment. And he said, Ed went, you said F you to me. There's no one else around here. There's just you and me. So when you said F you meant me. I'm not going to talk to you. And I swear, Alan said that, like, I don't know. I mean, I have that sort of memory, like he said, for like 2 weeks or something. Maybe it wasn't that long. He said the longest time, Ed just wouldn't talk to him. That was it. And there they were in the wilderness. And so maybe I'll get him to clarify that story and exactly where they were and where they were getting their mail, and I'll throw it in on his cuke.com page. If you just go to cuke.com and write, I think you can write Yehudah, 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 and that'll do it. That'll come up. Yeah, Yehudah Alan Winter, and I'll look around and make sure I've got everything linked to and together on his Cuke page, because I got a bunch of information about early, for the book, A Brief History of Tassajara, I got a bunch of information from him about what it was like there the year before Zen Center bought it, and some, details on that, and then details that for Tassajara stories, because in the book Crooked Cucumber, I just glance over us, getting Tassajara and the early days there. But I go into that more in detail in Tassajara stories with both him and Ed. And I got some new information, new details about that today that really I've got enough now, Each story has its limit of how many details you need. You can keep going. You can get going. You can write forever about a box of tissues. You could just write forever about it. You could have somebody sitting in a chair write forever. Or that could just be something in passing you write and say, she was sitting in a chair. So it's sort of like how high resolution you want. You're going to pull in from getting, it's like levels of magnification. You have to choose where to go in deep and where to come out and move on. Or else, if you just keep going in, would just spend like eternity with one string, if string theory really is something real. Okay, well, that's enough of all that. So this has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm D.C. Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Kadrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.